When he decided to give up his corporate career, I was very apprehensive. I was quite skeptical. When he announced it, it was a bit of a shock, and I felt that why is he giving up these 10 years of earning life?
I used to go to Netherlands very often. So if you go by KLM and you are flying business class, then they actually give you one of these when you get down from the flight. The actual houses that are there in the Netherlands, they are built along the canal, and it is a very unique thing there.
Now I feel okay, things have turned out well. There are times of uncertainty, but then we have lived with times of uncertainty. The financial security is not something that I need to worry about anymore.
Proudly part of the 01 network by Zerodha.
Born and brought up in Durgapur. It's an industrial town about 150 odd kilometers away from Calcutta. My dad was a chemical engineer, so he joined there in 1960. We were not rich, but we had a very comfortable living. I mean, I had two siblings. I mean, money supply, I mean, as far as my dad was concerned, I suppose was always a little tight. All three of us were studying at the same time practically. I mean, we didn't have any luxuries, so to say, but we did go out for travel once in a while. We went to places like Kashmir. Once we went to the Andamans. That's primarily what we did. Once I did my 12th, those days you could either look at engineering or you could look at medicine. I did my engineering from Jadavpur University and in computer science, which had just started 1 year back. So my engineering degree was from 1982 to 1986. In 85, we started thinking about, okay, what after engineering? So that was when I just saw the ad one day about the IIMs and all that. And I thought it would be a good idea to at least take the test. Then when I got the call, that went pretty well, so that's what I did for the next 2 years. 86 to 88, I was in Joka in the IIM campus. Let me give you a rundown on my career in terms of the different phases. So the first phase, you can probably say, was between 1988 when I joined my first job up to 1994. So in the first phase, I was mainly involved into software consulting, some amount of project management. When I joined, my salary was obviously, just out of college, I was probably getting only about 60,000 per year. By the time I left, I was probably getting maybe about 2 lakhs a year or something. The second phase mainly to sales and marketing. So this period was from 94 to 98. When I joined Nucleus, salary itself was probably around 2.5 lakhs a year. And then when I left, then my salary was about 5 lakhs. 98 to 2000, that was a little different because I joined a company called Satyam Infoway. They had to set up some kind of a call center, which is very common nowadays, but was quite a novelty in 1998. My salary increased a reasonable amount, like I got about 9 lakhs. So here, I think the major shift in my career is that there was one company from the US who were actually looking to set up an IT-related services company in Chennai. So this was a major break in the sense that, okay, my salary in Satyam was probably about 9-10 lakhs. So this kind of went to, something like 20 lakhs. So this was a significant break, I would say. But even though, I did quite well there in terms of setting up things and all, I didn't really, like the company culture. They wanted to get profits even before you invest in the operation. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And by that time, okay, I already had the designation of a president and all that. So to that extent, it was easy to find other roles. And I joined a company in Chennai where I worked for the next 5 years. But initially, when I went there, I was, the vice president marketing. But, within a year, I became the CEO. So this place, as I said, my salary again was in a similar pattern, total of about 24 lakhs. And I was here till 2005. 6. And then 2007, I shifted to Hyderabad. We shifted here. I joined a company called ForceSoft. Again, I initially joined in terms of implementation and managing the entire software business of the company. And at a later date, again after maybe 1.5 years or so, I was made the CEO. I was there till 2012. I initially joined at about 30 lakhs plus some variable salary and all. When I left, it was probably in the range of 45 to 50 lakhs. Then the last 2 years, I was in a company called Goldstone Technologies. And then in Goldstone, my overall salary would probably be in the range of 65 to 70 lakhs. That was it really. I mean, 2015, I kind of hoped that I had achieved financial freedom and therefore I didn't need to work anymore. I think there's also a very interesting study. So they saw that people who were giving up work or retiring around 55 or something, they lived till 85, 90. People who worked till 67, proportion of them who died by 75 was very high. What they were saying is that by the time you work till 67, you really don't have energy to do anything else. And therefore, you are kind of being yourself and being at home or whatever. And then you don't have much to live for. Whereas somebody who's actually retired at 55 or even 60, I mean, they have probably traveled for 10 years. So they have that level of well-being and energy to kind of take them for another 15 years or so. They're actually advising people to retire early now. So what they say there is, if you have even a couple of millions or even 1 million and you are being reasonable in your spending and all that, then by the time, even if you die after another 20, 30 years, money that you started with, you will actually end up with much more than that. I mean, the fear that people have that I'll run out of money is actually unfounded. But as I said, the more important thing is that what are you going to do? You need to be comfortable with that. If you are not comfortable with that, then just the fact that you are not going to office by itself is not helping. Your calculation for how much money you need is going to depend on two things. One is how your money increases, and the second is how your expenses increase. Your money increase is going to depend on the rate of return of your portfolio. Your increase in expenses are largely going to be linked to inflation, the inflation number that is relevant to your lifestyle. We need to look at what we call as a real rate of return, which is the difference between your portfolio return and the inflation. As long as the real rate of return is positive, you can simply multiply your first year expenses by the number of years hoping to live. As long as you are earning more in terms of your portfolio return, that gap that you are having is only going to have a positive bias towards your portfolio. And if you look at a 30-year period, there will be a few years, about 4 or 5 years maybe, where the real rate of return will be negative. However, when the market rebounds, then you get a lot more than what you had lost. And therefore, over a 30-year period, you can easily make the assumption that your first year expenses into that 30 years will be a safe enough corpus. So as I said, in my case, I had assumed 12 lakh annual expenses. I had multiplied it by 30 and I had said 3.6 crores. And you might want to keep a safety margin. Thankfully, in my case, it was a little more than that. I was talking about 5 crores. So therefore, that seemed to be a very safe figure. It was primarily in 1992 and then in 1993 when I was thinking of getting married. I probably tried to think more consciously about money. Two reasons. One is whatever money I had, most of it was kind of spent in the wedding. So beyond that, both of us realized that, okay, it was, we are pretty much starting from scratch. To a large degree in those days, the money that we, invested was mostly done for, tax saving purposes. He had started a PPF account some time back before we got married. And I thought that was a good idea. So in 1994, I started a PPF account too. First investment into equity was, more of an accident because I actually invested in a non-convertible debenture L&T had come out with. In those days, they were paying 17% interest. So I had 10,000 rupees. So I thought it would be a good idea to put it in that. And that's what I did. And they paid it for 3 years, I think. Every year they paid 1,700 rupees. And then they gave me back the 10,000. They also had acquired this company, Ultratech Cement. And they were generally giving some money to the people who had invested in their NCD. So they gave me 40 shares of Ultratech Cement. So those 40 shares of Ultratech Cement, if you look at the value today, it will probably be nearly 5 lakhs or something. It was only at a later date, 2000 onward, that we started looking at mutual funds and also looking at some other areas because that time our salary had grown considerably. 2004-2005 period was when we started investing in equity in a big manner. Because once we got an idea about the mutual fund and we understood, what was actually happening, then we realized that, okay, some of these things we could do on our own, and we started that.
He already had L&T and I think ITC, but I added to that. The fundamentals I would understand, how is the economy doing and what are the industries countries that are doing well. And for the technical analysis, both of us would watch this program on CNBC, and I would get, when a stock is expected to break out or when it is just going sideways. From there, I would get some idea, and that is how I started choosing the companies and where to invest in.
I mean, at the point of time I gave up my regular corporate job, my portfolio was about 5 crores. It was only in equity and debt, and within equity, more of stock, less of mutual funds. So what happened since then is that whatever surplus I had through my consulting or through any other, any surplus that I had even from my passive income, we were able to channelize it into mostly mutual funds. And part of it was also into debt mutual fund because I didn't have too much of debt mutual fund, within that 5 crores initially. So if you look at the portfolio today, let's say around 15 crores plus the house. If you look at the predictable income streams, I would say dividend is something which will happen every year. The exact amount of it is obviously dependent on the market, but it'll probably be between 4 lakhs and 6 lakhs. It's rarely been less than 4. It has rarely been more than 6. Most of the times it's around 5. So that I think is one part of it. Like the second part of it, as I said, is the rent from the Chennai house. That is also fairly predictable. We came here in 2007. So for the last 17 years or so, it's on rent really. There have been odd periods of maybe 3 months, 2 months where we are changing from one tenant to the other, where that money is not coming. But I would say 90% of the time, or maybe even 95% of the time, we get the rent. The tax-free bonds, which I talked about, 2.2 lakhs a year from the interest, that is totally predictable. It comes every thing. The annuity that I get from LIC and also the post office, whatever we used to get, those are also totally predictable. That's also about 2 lakhs. The way I have tried to structure my portfolio is that it's not just a question of how much you are earning out of it. I have actually structured it in such a way that I actually don't need to worry where the money is coming from. The only difference, you'll have a lot of people saying that, okay, we have got so much money, and then, you set up some redemption every month. I haven't done it that way. I believe that the way I have structured it, there are cash flows that will happen at different points of time in the year. And unless there is a significant expenditure, then I won't need to redeem anything. That's what I believe. So in education, we talk of 3 types of things, the schooling, the college, and then of course, if the children want to do it, then the post-graduation. I believe that as far as my responsibilities are concerned, I think it is to give them a good schooling and then to give them the best possible graduation based on, of course, where they can get admitted and all that. Beyond that, you should be able to find a decent job. And then, it's a personal decision as to whether you want to do the job for a few years and then do a post-graduation, or in some cases, people want to do it immediately, like I had done when I was younger. So I believe that it's very important for people to feel they are responsible for the money that is going into their education, especially when they are adults. So after I was in a regular job, obviously the amount of time that I had was significantly increased. So that gave us the opportunity to find out more about places and also kind of decide what we wanted to do.
It also gave us much more flexibility. Like earlier, we would have to, wait till he could take leave, or whether it coincided with the children's leave. So I think that flexibility was also much more enhanced.
And sometimes we plan at short notice also.
Yeah.
Especially countries which doesn't require a visa and all that. There we can plan at really
on,
short
on
notice.
Very short notice, yes.
After we got married, we have consciously tried to travel. So typically in a year, we would travel 3 or 4 times. All those things were mostly, within the country, but we used to travel. In fact, when we shifted to Chennai, one of our major interests was that, we would get to see a lot of South India.
Last year, I think we started with the sailing trip on the Maldives, and then Sri Lanka the next month, and then this Malaysia trip. And one very interesting trip was the Kazakhstan trip, because that was it's not really a tourist country in that sense. Then of course we went to UK because my daughter was there, so we spent a month there. And with them we went to Scotland for a week. There was Georgia. We used a UK visa for the Georgia trip, because on the UK visa you can go to some places for which you don't need a separate visa. So that was one. And I think the last trip was Cambodia. So about 7-8 countries in 1 year. I think that was quite a bit. So that was just a one-off year. I don't think we'll be repeating that.
Wherever we travel, we don't try to do a whistle stop tour. Like we try to at least be at a place for a couple of days so that we can walk around, we can experience the place, have food somewhere, that kind of thing. Plus, of course, see whatever is there to be seen. But I think the excitement of newer places, some places are completely different from what you think about. Like you can,
Yes, I think exploring a new place is the motivating factor, and also getting to know new cultures. I mean, people have such different ways of living.
Okay, so for this year, what we have planned so far is a trip to the Philippines, which we are going on the 21st. And beyond that, we haven't really decided on anything, but we'll see. We'll hopefully do a few more. Yeah.
Hey, if you think you resonate with these stories and you think you have one worth sharing too, then please fill in the form in the pinned comments below and you can get featured on Wint Wealth.